Have you ever complained about a chilly summer? Well, imagine a summer where it snowed in June, where crops failed across entire continents, and the sun seemed to just disappear. This isn't the plot of a disaster movie. It's exactly what happened in 1816, a year that went down in history as the year without a summer. What caused this global catastrophe, and how did it change the world forever? Let's find out. Our story begins not in 1816, but a year earlier, and halfway around the world from where the worst effects were felt. In April of 1815, on the island of Sumbawa, in what is now Indonesia, Mount Tambora, a volcano that had been dormant for centuries, woke up with terrifying force. The eruption was colossal, the largest volcanic eruption in over 1,300 years. It was so powerful that it was heard over 1,600 miles away. It blasted an estimated 36 cubic miles of rock, ash, and dust into the atmosphere. To put that in perspective, that's enough material to cover the entire state of Texas in almost 2 inches of ash. The immediate devastation was immense. The island of Sumbawa was completely ravaged, and tens of thousands of people lost their lives in the initial blast and the tsunamis that followed. But the true global impact was just beginning. The sheer volume of sulfur dioxide and ash shot into the stratosphere, up to 27 miles high, was so vast that it formed a massive aerosol veil. This veil began to slowly drift around the globe, acting like a giant mirror, reflecting sunlight back into space and preventing it from warming the Earth's surface. By the spring of 1816, the effects were starting to be felt in the Northern Hemisphere. People in North America and Europe looked up at the sky and saw a persistent, strange, dry fog that reddened the sun and made it look dim, even at noon. Sunspots became visible to the naked eye. But the weird sky was just the beginning. The weather turned bizarrely and dangerously cold. In New England and eastern Canada, the spring of 1816 was a cruel joke. May was frosty, but June brought something truly unprecedented. A wave of Arctic air swept down, bringing heavy snow and freezing temperatures. On June 6th, it snowed in Albany, New York, and Quebec City. Rivers and lakes that should have been pleasant for a summer swim were still frozen solid. Farmers who had already planted their spring crops watched in horror as their fields were buried under snow and their young plants were killed by the hard frost. One farmer in Vermont wrote in his diary, "Severe frost, all was frozen. The appearance of winter is on all sides." This wasn't a one-off event. The cold persisted throughout the summer. There were frosts in July and August, months that are supposed to be the warmest of the year. The corn crop, a staple food, completely failed across New England. Wheat and potato harvests were disastrously small. The result was immediate and catastrophic. Widespread food shortages. The price of grain skyrocketed. For many families, it meant starvation. This period became known grimly as 1800 and froze to death. Many desperate families packed up their belongings and began migrating west, seeking a better climate and a new life. This event actually accelerated the westward expansion of the United States. The story was tragically similar across the Atlantic in Europe. Already struggling to recover from the Napoleonic Wars, the continent was plunged into its worst famine of the 19th century. In Switzerland, the relentless summer rains caused rivers to flood, ruining what little harvest there was. People were forced to eat cats, rats, and even moss to survive. Food riots broke out in Britain, France, and Germany as desperate people stormed bakeries and granaries. The price of oats, the primary food for horses, became so high that many people couldn't afford to feed their animals. This transportation crisis is said to have inspired a German inventor named Karl von Drais to create a new form of personal transport that didn't require a horse. His invention, the Lauf machine, or running machine, which was the direct ancestor of the modern bicycle. But the impact of the year without a summer wasn't just agricultural and economic, it was also cultural. The eerie atmospheric effects created by the volcanic ash in the sky inspired artists. The painter, J.M.W. Turner, is famous for his dramatic, colorful sunsets. And many art historians believe that the spectacular red and yellow skies he painted were a direct result of the Tambora ash cloud lingering over London. Perhaps the most famous cultural product of this gloomy summer came from a group of literary friends on vacation in Switzerland. Trapped indoors by the incessant, dreary rain at a villa on Lake Geneva, Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, his future wife Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, and their friend John Polidori decided to pass the time by having a competition to see who could write the best ghost story. Lord Byron wrote a fragment of a vampire tale that would later inspire Polidori to write The Vampire, one of the first influential vampire stories in English literature. But the most enduring creation came from 18-year-old Mary, haunted by the gloomy weather and conversations about galvanism and reanimating corpses. She had a terrifying waking dream. That dream became the seed for her novel, Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. One of the most iconic horror stories of all time was born directly out of the miserable, sunless summer of 1816. For years, people had no idea what had caused this bizarre and devastating climate shift. They blamed sunspots, divine punishment, or just a freak act of nature. It wasn't until the 20th century that scientists were able to connect the dots, linking the global climate chaos of 1816 directly back to the eruption of Mount Tambora a year earlier. The story of the year without a summer is a powerful and sobering reminder of how interconnected our world is. A single event on one side of the planet can trigger a domino effect, leading to famine, social unrest, mass migration, and even artistic innovation on the other. It shows us how fragile our climate and our civilizations are, and how dependent we are on a stable, predictable sun. So the next time you enjoy a warm summer's day, take a moment to appreciate it. History shows us it's not something we can always take for granted. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey back in time as fascinating as I did, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more stories about how our world came to be. Let me know in the comments what you think is the most surprising part of this story. Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.